Hey guys, I know I've been away a while. I've been a little under the weather. I've been working quite a bit with security and my own personal security and kind of exchanging out some of my electronics and updating some of my equipment. So I've been a little bit preoccupied with that. There hasn't really been a good Wi-Fi signal out here to do live streams, so I think I'm going to start getting back into doing some published videos and just kind of talking about some different things that are currently trending. Right now, I'm in the Philippines, but I think one of the things that's really interesting in world events is the Trump and Kim Jong-un meeting that's currently going on right actually at the hotel, or some of the events are at the hotel that I was doing some live streams at, which was the JW Marriott, right there next to a lot of the government capital functions. So the meeting between these guys is important for denuclearization.
And we can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place. Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago.
The U.S. was the first to invent this nuclear threat with the Trinity bomb that was first exploded, what was that, 1945 in New Mexico, which was followed up with the two bombs in Japan, which are the only two nuclear warheads that have been used in a major world war.
Sometimes you have to walk, and this was just one of those times. Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that. There's a warmth that we have. Now, I hope that stays. I think it will.
Some of these are peace talks, but I always think it's a little bit hypocritical when you start looking at some of the underlying data. So this is a map of the bombs that were dropped in 2016 by the U.S. So you can see the countries primarily hit were Syria and Iraq, which are just in ruins now because of a lot of the chaos that's going on in those regions. The other ones that stand out are Afghanistan and Libya, both also with substantial amounts of bombs, and then sporadic ones, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. This is another map of all of the U.S. bases that are spread out all across the world. It is kind of an underlying thing that U.S. taxpayers are basically forced into funding. I would have to imagine that this would be part of the negotiations with Trump and Kim Jong-un, because there have been several reports that are out there, I'll leave the links in the description below, of these entities that are showing that not only is North Korea bypassing U.S. sanctions with cryptocurrency, there's also been a lot of hacking claims in the last year that some of those are coming or emanating from that country via Singapore. So I think that there are some interesting elements to consider when you're looking at the cryptocurrency side of things, because it's a lot of these wars are financially funded. There are corporate entities that make out pretty well from these. The first one with the nuclear weapon that was detonated, the Trinity bomb, and then all the subsequent bombs that were dropped over the years after that, whether it was testing or actually in a particular war. DuPont was the primary company that was in charge of this and ended up actually getting out of that deal months later. The nuclear program was first started in my home state of Washington, in a place called Hanford. There was a tremendous amount of testing as well as nuclear power that was being developed in that region. A lot of the people that were involved with that had no idea what they were working on. It was called the Manhattan Project. And less than 1% of the people involved with that project had any idea that they were working on something that was going to be detonated on the Japanese people. Hanford is just a nuclear disaster. It's full of nuclear waste. It's a huge problem. There's been reports that there's been substantial amount of radioactive material that's leaked into the Columbia River and subsequently downstream out to the ocean. We've already seen some of these problems with the earthquake in Japan and how that impacted the nuclear fallout there, as well as just how devastating nuclear technology is from an environmental hazardous point of view. The aim and the goal of these talks, of this summit, is to kind of have some resolution to kind of denuclearize. So If you look at this chart here, there has been quite a bit of a retracement of nuclear weapons from kind of a height of the Cold War era, and you know, some of the different time periods where nuclear weapons were being stockpiled.
Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
The nation states are funded by, you know, their traditional fiat currencies that are coordinated through the banks and with, you know, the control of the money supply in that sense. You know, cryptocurrencies is decentralized, and so it's a completely new ballgame when you're kind of looking at this in a larger scale. Now, when you have a certain level of mass adoption, and you have, you know, perhaps you've reached what Malcolm Gladwell calls the tipping point, where all of a sudden, you know, we hit a critical mass, and then boom, like cryptocurrencies really explode. We may see that in the next bull run. You know, this is going to be a huge blow to the power structures of the nation state. I mean, look at what has just recently happened with the government shutdown, one of the longest government shutdowns in U.S. history. If that was a source of reliance for you, you know, were you impacted in any way by that? You know, that's something that you have to consider. I think we're seeing more and more of a movement from government officials to be able to, at least with cryptocurrencies that are public, to have a little bit of control over that. Perhaps if they're being used at a particular exchange or a particular entity, you know, the government can come in and contact that exchange directly and say, hey, listen, we have questions and concerns about these addresses. Can you not deal with these addresses? So if you're a cryptocurrency exchange wanting to stay in business, that's going to be something that you have to take into consideration, as you may have to reject certain addresses as being potentially associated with illicit activity. So I think it's important to note that there is a little bit of government involvement in some of the types of transactions that can be stopped in one way or another.
Have you spoken to Kim Jong-un about his nuclear program at all? Have you said, please don't start a nuclear war?
But he has spoken to me when last I was there a couple of years ago. He said, I don't want war. This is 2 words. Okay. I don't want war because, like I said, I would take you over there and let you listen to the way he talks. Okay. He sounds like he's more of a kid than anything.
Okay.
And I think his grandfather's father, that regime, has passed on to him. And I think he really wants to change his culture, but I think he's forced to be in this position because every time I go over there, he's changed so much for the people, and people don't see that.
And he's a kid, but he's a kid with nuclear weapons.
Well, hey.
It's a tough combination.
I know that, right?
Have you spoken to him about human rights? Do you feel like you're close enough to him to talk to him about human rights?
Well, I'm close enough to him to the fact that he could discuss anything with me. But the deal is, I don't discuss politics because that's not my job. My job is to be a human being, to try to connect us with them.
You've got me. You've got me over here. You got me on this side of the top. And I will say again, I will say one more time, you must be high.
Taking like the Trump, Kim Jong-un, denuclearization, and some of the relations to cryptocurrency in terms of bypassing sanctions, hacking claims, that sort of thing. One of the reasons why I think this is an important topic for cryptocurrency is because with cryptocurrency you're dealing with money. You have large sums of money that you're able to use for whatever projects you have. So the impact of having a regime that has the ability or the foresight to understand that they could have access to nuclear technology, nuclear weapons, because the technology has spread. So this is a map currently of the states with nuclear weapons, and I wanted to kind of show a little bit of this. I think one of the things that stands out, you can see the red with North Korea and the red with Pakistan and India. So those three countries are not in a particular alliance that we're seeing with China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and the United States. There's other, countries that have been rumored to have nuclear weapons, which the primary one being Israel.
There is a chance for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. And, it's interesting, all my life I've heard that the toughest of all deals, when they talk about tough deals, we all like deals, but the toughest of all deals would be peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
I think we can follow, world news and world politics, at least to kind of have an understanding of some of the implications that this will have. Regimes have the ability to have access to some of these really destructive technologies that could impact a large amount of people in a particular region of the world. So there's always kind of been that fear there, and we saw some of that tensions in the Cold War. This could potentially be the catalyst that leads us into like a World War III. We haven't seen the nuclear option being used since it was used against the Japanese in World War II. That essentially kind of ended that conflict on that particular side of the world. But if you look back into why a lot of this technology was researched in such a covert way to begin with, was the U.S. fears that the Germans would have access to this technology first. And if you had a nuclear German Nazi regime in power, that would have a drastic impact on world events. That was literally just, what was that, like 70 years ago or so? So this hasn't been that long ago where we've had some of these totalitarian regimes. You can see how this may play into world politics and essentially a little bit of like a power grab. I don't think Kim Jong-un necessarily wants to give up a lot of the kind of the leverage, I guess, that he has with some of these these types of threats in a way. So the goal here is kind of an economic one. So that's kind of the carrot that Trump is holding out in front of Kim Jong-un, is that this is going to be very financially rewarding for your country, and could be a very big economic boost if we can kind of work together to denuclearize this region. If North Korea ends up becoming denuclearized, then the only real entities that you have outside of some of the traditional nuclear carrying countries is India, Pakistan.
Pakistan and India, they've been going at it, and we've been involved in trying to have them stop. It's been going on for a long time, decades and decades. There's a lot of dislike, unfortunately.
India tested what was called the peaceful nuclear explosion. It was called the Smiling Buddha. Their stated intentions with their nuclear program is that it's for peaceful intentions, perhaps defense. Some of the big tensions that I've been hearing with India have been more from Pakistan. So because of the huge dynamics there. So Pakistan is a primarily Muslim country, India primarily Hindu, and so that was kind of the breaking lines between those two countries when they split. The India situation I'm also following pretty closely. I think it's really interesting in terms of how that's going to play out with world politics with cryptocurrency, because they are starting to get a little bit more involved in talking about that publicly. Prime Minister Modi being the guy that's kind of leading some of the talks in terms of cryptocurrency regulation, have a kind of a new set of laws in terms of having access. I mean, we've already seen, and I've already seen this personally when we're traveling to some of these major nuclear esque countries that have nuclear power. What you're seeing is that they are completely violating people's rights, and the people that are entering the country, all of their data on all of their electronic devices is subject to search without warning or really due process. And that's what I experienced when I came into the U.S. I just was completely, had all of my stuff, taken from me. And so I've heard some of the same instances of this happening with other people related to cryptocurrency. It's kind of a new a new phenomenon that we're seeing. But when you really dig down to it, a lot of the reasonings they use is like, we're just looking for child pornography or something like that. Well, what's to say I don't have personal, videos of something, sexual acts that I engaged with a consenting partner, and they would have access to that. Not only would they have access to it, a lot of that stuff is being uploaded forever into a database such as Factum. So I think that I think that different countries are going to have different policies when it comes to some of the things they're doing. You see, the U.S. government is really looking and partnering with Chain Analysis and Factum as part of kind of their cryptocurrency defense. And other countries, I think, are going to have their own options. We're starting to see this in India, which is kind of very interesting with some of the stuff that some of my interests that I'm looking at. Financial liberation through cryptocurrency brings about a lot of different positives, but also a lot of different negatives, and a lot of things that should be considered when you're looking at this topic. And so that's one of the things that I try to kind of focus on a little bit more is some of the bigger overarching concepts and topics that once you kind of get to a certain point where you are financially liberated, or you feel a certain sense of freedom through cryptocurrency, I think it's important to kind of start looking at some of the next levels of thought. There's some very interesting things to ponder. And part of that is kind of what's going on right now in current events. One of the negatives that you could look at is kind of a particular regime which may have a unstated goal, or may have ill intentions, and the decentralization, the financial liberation is a catalyst for those types of regimes to seek the next level of control, which is more one of power, not necessarily one of financial gain. And I think that those are some of the things that we may need to look at and ponder looking forward with cryptocurrency is how this impacts kind of the bigger picture. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you could kind of spin things, and it's important also with legal ramifications, because there's people that are doing life sentences in federal penitentiaries in the U.S. for victimless crimes related to cryptocurrency. I know these are some really big overarching topics, and I think one of the things that at least for me, like I was kind of wondering, like, what can I do on like an individual level? Probably one of the best methods that I've found that's at least has some scientific validity behind it is meditation. And this is non-religious. This is a practice for mental clarity. There's been a lot of scientific studies on the benefits of meditation in times of peace talks and kind of very important worldly events. I think the practice of meditation by people en masse can have a very beneficial, positive impact. And the reason I say that is because of some of the studies that have been put out there that have shown a little bit of correlation between those topics. Getting into transcendental meditation, this was a practice that I learned from Maharishi University back in 2008. So Maharishi is the founder and kind of the leading thought figure behind the transcendental meditation movement and some of the studies that are being done at Maharishi University. So this is something that I've kind of been working on. I've been trying to get into learning to meditate more, being able to silence my mind. It's a lot harder than it sounds. One of the primary leading guys that I was really fascinated with was a guy called John Hagelin, and he's kind of the primary PhD astrophysicist that's doing a lot of really interesting scientific work.
John, here I do have genuine questions of a quantum physicist.
You talk funny.
Thank you. What you just said then was a hate crime against the English. John, why on earth are you, a quantum physicist, even here on a night where we're talking about transcendental meditation?
Quantum physics has basically revealed the fundamental unity of life. Surface diversity, but deeper levels at the molecular, atomic, subatomic, subnuclear, electroweak unified, etc., culminates in the discovery of what's called the unified field, fulfilling Einstein's dream of revealing the fundamental unity at the basis of the diversity of the universe. And what does that have to do with us?
How dare you say I talk funny and then come out with that? So you're saying that the idea that things are separate and distinct from each other on a material level is illusory. Is that what you're saying?
That's
it's
correct.
a sensory illusion.
That's correct. But you can go beyond the senses. And that's what meditation traditionally is. Properly understood, it is a technique to pull the awareness from the outwardly directed senses powerfully within to experience deeper levels of mind, simpler, quieter, more unified levels of the thinking process, and then slipping beyond thought, that's where the transcendental comes in, beyond thought altogether to experience this universal unity at the basis of mind and matter.
We can access neurologically in our own minds the unifying field of creativity from which all energy and matter has come, perhaps even the cosmos and universe itself. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, and it's not just philosophically interesting, but it's really practically important because that meditative state is considered to be a fourth state of consciousness. That means not waking, dreaming, sleeping, in which the entire brain, as we've heard, is engaged. And that orderly, coherent style of functioning of the brain develops the full potential of human life. So truth be told, meditation, transcendental meditation, comes from the ancient wisdom of yoga, and it's designed, it's engineered to develop the full potential of the brain. And as a side benefit, stress-related illness melts away.
One of the things I thought was really interesting at the Maharishi University was every single building on that university, the entrance door was in the east. And so there's an overarching philosophy behind architecture within that culture, which emanates from India and Vedic traditions. So the entrance is in the east. You meditate facing the east, the rising sun. This is the energy, the ideal flow of energy through the body. So it's important also to get comfortable. So one of the things I found very difficult being a former athlete, having to deal with bad knees, bad ankles, bad hips, is getting into a meditative pose. Keeping a straight back is kind of difficult for me. It's kind of painful. Probably one of the best ways that I've found personally to get into a comfortable position so that I can try as best I can to silence my mind for meditation is to get into a comfortable chair facing the east in a room with no distractions, where I'm not going to be disturbed for about at least 10 to 15 minutes. It's really interesting when they hook up a lot of the electrical diodes onto someone that's learned to meditate for a long time. Transcendental meditation, the actual brand, the one that's being taught by Maharishi University, is a form of a silent mantra. And this is used as a way of detaching oneself from anxiety, promoting harmony and self-realization by meditation. So just kind of go over those again. I mean, some of my real basic pointers is just getting into a nice comfortable position, facing the east. Get into a position where you're able to try as best you can to release all thoughts out of your mind. And one of the best ways is to find a mantra, a particular word, and maybe that doesn't have a whole lot of meaning. A Tibetan way is to do the Om. You can even just think of doing like just silencing your mind to the point where you can focus on something like that as a mantra. You can look up a few mantras as well on the internet. And learning to also focus a little bit more on the breath. If you are going to try to focus on something, maybe you're looking to release the mantra. You don't need the mantra anymore, and you can get into a point where you can really, really quiet your mind and kind of get into a state of nothingness. And that is the ultimate goal with meditation, and kind of to release yourself, your mind, the concept of time. It's a lot harder than it sounds. Getting to a point where you're able to silence your mind for 10 minutes is a very daunting task. You're constantly going to be having thoughts that are going to be bombarding your mind. It could be a lot of different topics that are going on in your personal life, could be things that are going on in your work life. This is more of a practice for mental clarity. There's been enough scientific studies on the meditation practice as being a beneficial practice, so I don't want this to come off as something that's like New Age or religious in nature. But I do feel that there are a lot of benefits with meditation, as well as benefits on kind of the collective consciousness of humans that are meditating in mass. And this has actually been proven with some of the studies that have been put out there by Maharishi University. I encourage you guys to check that out, and I'm going to get back into doing some more cryptocurrency related videos, so be looking forward to that. Because of my Wi-Fi situation, I think a lot of them are going to be some cut up and edited videos like this, so going to be getting back into the swing of things, but may not be every day or daily. So I appreciate you guys staying online. Enjoy the short clip by Maharishi, and catch you guys on the next one.
The principle of transcendental meditation is simple. Being is bliss in its nature, is infinite happiness. Mind is always moving in the direction of greater happiness. It is the experience of everyone. Wherever the mind goes, it goes in the direction of greater happiness. And because the nature of inner being is bliss, infinite happiness, therefore, the mind during transcendental meditation takes that inward course in a most spontaneous manner. In this meditation, we do not concentrate or control the mind. We let the mind follow its natural instinct towards greater happiness, and it goes within and gains bliss consciousness in the being. We take a specific thought which suits us, which is called the mantra, or a suitable sound for us, with the thought of that sound, and starts minimizing that thought to experience the finite state of that thought until the source of thought is fathomed and the conscious mind reaches the transcendental area of being. So from gross thought to the subtle state of thought, to the subtler, to the subtlest state of thought, this is the path of transcendental meditation till the mind, conscious mind, reaches the bliss consciousness or pure consciousness or the state of being. Here in this state of being, the mind becomes soaked with energy, intelligence, and great happiness. With it, it comes out and performs and experiences the world much better than before.